When Clara stepped into the small frontier town of Red Creek, whispers always followed her, yet she carried herself with a quiet strength that unsettled some and intrigued others. People noticed her calm gaze, the way her dress moved with purpose through the dirt streets, and the mysterious confidence that set her apart. But it wasn't Clara who truly set tongues wagging in Red Creek. It was the man she had chosen to marry. Everyone knew him as Colton Hayes, the scarred cowboy who spoke little and fought often, the man no outlaw dared cross and no lawman dared trust. And when Clara became his wife, she became the woman everyone pitied, whispered about, and even feared. Why would she marry him? They muttered in saloons and church pews. Doesn't she know what he's done? Doesn't she see what he hides? But Clara wasn't blind, and she wasn't naive. She knew Colton's reputation, the stories of barroom brawls, the scars on his face, the whispered rumors that he carried sins as heavy as his revolver. Yet something in his quiet eyes spoke louder than the gossip. Something told her that behind the scars was a man worth knowing, a man worth loving. Their marriage began quietly, without celebration, without the blessing of the town. Clara and Colton moved into a small house at the edge of Red Creek, where the prairie winds whispered against the windows at night. At first, Clara noticed his habits, how he avoided removing his shirt even in the blistering heat, how he always turned away when dressing, how he tensed if anyone, even her, reached for the buttons near his collar. The mystery gnawed at her, but she never pressed. Love, she believed, was not about forcing open doors, but about waiting for them to unlock. Still, the whispers of the townsfolk never left her ears. They said Colton bore marks of punishment, brands of shame burned into his skin for crimes too dark to speak. They said he carried secrets that could ruin anyone who came too close. The night thunder shook the town. Clara woke to find Colton sitting by the window, his shirt discarded on the chair, his head bowed in the lightning's glow. Her breath caught as she saw his back for the first time. Jagged scars crisscrossed his skin, not the marks of bar fights or duels, but something older, something crueler. She rose silently, approaching him, her heart aching at the sight. But before she could touch him, he turned sharply, grabbing his shirt and covering himself, his face dark with shame. "Don't look at me," he whispered harshly, his voice breaking. "You'll wish you never did." But Clara's heart only swelled with love and sorrow. She touched his hand gently and asked, "Who did this to you, Colton?" For the first time, his walls began to crumble. He told her pieces of the truth, voice heavy with the weight of memory, punishing him with lash and iron for the smallest disobedience. He bore not just the scars of their cruelty, but also the shame they had beaten into him, the belief that he was unworthy of kindness or love. When he escaped, he built a new life as a cowboy, hiding his pain beneath silence and strength, never letting anyone see the marks that told his story. "That's why I fight," he confessed, "because I won't ever be caged again. That's why I keep my shirt on, because I can't stand their stares. They don't see me, they see what was done to me." His voice broke, and for the first time, Clara saw not the feared gunslinger, but the wounded man who had survived, a past darker than she could imagine. Clara knelt beside him, tears stinging her eyes. She placed her hands gently over his scars and whispered, "These marks don't make you less. They make you more. They tell the story of a man who endured, who survived, who fought his way back to freedom. I don't see shame, Colton, I see strength. And if the world can't see that, then let them turn away. I will see it for you." Her words broke through him like sunlight after storm clouds. He trembled, not with fear, but with the weight of finally being seen, not as a monster, not as a shadow, but as a man worthy of love. In that moment, their marriage deepened into something no gossip could tarnish, something no scar could destroy. But Red Creek was not a town that left its outcasts in peace. Trouble always followed Colton. When a gang of outlaws rode into town demanding money, no one dared stand up to them, no one except Colton. The townsfolk watched from their windows as he stepped into the dusty street, his hand steady on his revolver, his voice calm as he told them to leave. Clara stood in the doorway, her heart pounding, into the belief that he was alone in his battles. But when the fight broke out, Clara's voice rang out above the gunfire. "Colton, you're not alone anymore." Her words gave him the strength of 10 men. He fought not for pride, not for reputation, but for love for the woman who saw past his scars, who gave him reason to believe again. When the dust settled and the outlaws fled, the town looked upon Colton not with fear, but with awe, and for the first time, Clara saw respect in their eyes, not pity. From that day on, their life together was no longer shadowed by shame. Clara would sometimes run her fingers over his scars, not to remind him of his pain, but to remind him of his survival, of the man he had become despite it all. And each time, Colton would hold her close and whisper, "You're the reason I can face them now. You're the reason I can breathe." The town still whispered, but the words no longer mattered. For Clara and Colton, love had burned brighter than fear, stronger than scars, fiercer than any outlaw's gun. And so, dear listener, if this story moved your heart, remember this: love is not about finding someone perfect. It's about seeing the truth in someone when the world refuses to. If you believe in stories that show the strength of love and the courage of the human spirit, then make sure to subscribe to this channel. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories like this to life. Stories that remind us all that even the deepest scars can become symbols of strength. Don't just watch, be part of the journey. Subscribe, share, and let's keep the spirit of storytelling alive together. After the gunfight that drove the outlaws out of Red Creek, life seemed to calm for a while. Colton Hayes, once feared as the scarred cowboy no one dared to touch, now walked through town with Clara at his side, and for the first time, people tipped their hats in respect instead of turning away in fear. Yet Colton could not bring himself to bask in their new acceptance. For every nod of approval he received, there was still the echo of old voices in his head, voices from the past, shouting commands, delivering punishments, branding him not as a man, but as property. Clara noticed the way he sometimes woke at night, sweat dripping down his face, fists clenched as if fighting phantoms. She would sit up, place her hand on his chest, and whisper, "You're safe. You're here with me. No one can hurt you now." And though his breathing slowed each time, Colton knew the ghosts of his past were not done with him yet. One evening, as the sun bled gold over the horizon, a letter arrived by stagecoach. The envelope bore no name, only a crude symbol burned into the paper, the mark of the men who had once owned him. When Colton saw it, his hands froze, his chest tightened, and the old shame threatened to choke him. He slipped the letter into his pocket, hoping Clara would not see, but she had already noticed the change in his eyes. Later, when she asked what troubled him, he shook his head and muttered, "Nothing you need to worry about." But Clara had learned his silences as well as his words, and she knew the weight he carried was heavier than any outlaw's threat. That night, when he thought she slept, Colton opened the letter by the dim glow of the lamp. The words inside were short, cruel, and sharp as a knife. "We haven't forgotten. You'll always belong to us. We're coming to take back what's ours." The next morning, Clara found him already saddling his horse. "Where are you going?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with worry. "Away," he answered gruffly. "It's the only way to keep you safe. They'll come for me, and I won't have you caught in their fire." Clara stepped forward, her eyes blazing. "Don't you dare think running will protect me. I didn't marry half a man, Colton. I married all of you, your scars, your past, your battles. If they come, we face them together." He stared at her, torn between love and fear, but the firmness in her voice anchored him. Now he realized Clara was more than his wife. She was his strength, his shield, and his hope. With a heavy sigh, he lowered his hand from the reins and whispered, "Then we'll face them." Days passed like the stillness before a storm. Word spread that riders had been seen on the edge of Red Creek, men with the same cruel brand Colton bore on his back. The townsfolk grew restless, fearful that trouble would return to their doorsteps. Some muttered that Colton had brought this danger upon them, that marrying a man with such a past was a curse. Clara heard their whispers, but she stood tall, refusing to let fear bend her resolve. At the saloon, she spoke out when others cowered. "Colton Hayes is no curse," she declared. "He's the reason this town still stands. And if you can't see the man behind the scars, then maybe it's not him who should be. Ashamed it's you." Her words silenced the room, and though some still doubted, others began to rally behind the woman whose courage outshone their own. When the riders finally came, The air thickened with dread. They arrived at dusk, a band of hardened men with cruel smiles. Their leader carrying the same brand burned into Colton's flesh. Hand him over. It seemed no one would speak, no one would act. Then Colton stepped forward, his black hat low over his eyes, his hand resting lightly on his revolver. "You'll have to go through me first," he said, his voice steady, though inside his heart thundered with the memories of chains and whips. The leader sneered. "You always were stubborn, boy. Thought you could run from us forever. But look at you now pretending to be a hero when you'll always be nothing but our broken property." Clara's voice rang out, fierce and unyielding. "He is no one's property. He is my husband, and he is free. And if you can't understand that, then you'll learn it the hard way." Her courage sparked something in the townsfolk. One by one, men stepped out from the shadows. Women clutching rifles, young boys with stones in their hands. For the first time in his life, Colton realized he wasn't standing alone, not against his past, not against his enemies. Guns roared, horses screamed, and dust filled the air. Colton fought like a man possessed, each shot a defiance against the chains that once bound him. Clara, steady with a rifle in her hands, fought beside the townsfolk, her eyes never leaving Colton. When the smoke cleared, the riders lay defeated or scattered, their leader pinned beneath Colton's boot. For a moment, the man laughed bitterly. "You think you've won? You'll never escape what you are." Colton looked down at him, his voice low but fierce. "You're right. I'll never escape what I am. I am scarred. I am broken. But I am also free, and I'll never bow to you again." With that, he turned away, leaving the man to his own shame. That night, as the town celebrated its survival, Colton and Clara returned to their small house. At the edge of Red Creek, he sat by the fire, finally unbuttoning his shirt without hesitation, letting the flames illuminate the scars he once hid. "These marks," she whispered, "are not the end of your story. They are the beginning." Colton, for the first time, felt a strange peace settle over him. The chains of his past had been broken, not by violence, but by love. Clara's unwavering love that refused to let him carry the burden alone. Let their story remind you that no past is too dark, no scar too deep to keep you from finding freedom and love. If this tale has touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Your support keeps stories like this alive. Stories of courage, redemption, and the power of love that refuses to give up. So click that subscribe button, join our growing family, and let's continue to share these unforgettable journeys together. The weeks after the riders, the townsfolk walked with lighter steps, no longer glancing nervously at the horizon in fear of shadows. Colton Hayes, once branded a menace and a mystery, had become a protector in their eyes. Children who once hid behind their mothers now waved at him in the street. Shopkeepers greeted him with nods of gratitude instead of suspicion. Yet despite the shift around him, Colton carried a silence in his heart that Clara could not ignore. At night, he would sit outside on the porch, staring into the endless prairie, his hat shadowing his face, his thoughts far away. Clara would join him, resting her hand over his, and whisper, "You're home now. You don't have to look back anymore." But Colton knew better. A man's past was not a trail so easily abandoned. One evening, as the sun set in streaks of crimson and gold, Colton finally spoke of the weight that lingered. "I never faced what they took from me. Not fully. I've carried their mark like a chain, and even now, when I close my eyes, I hear them. I feel them. If I don't put an end to it, I'll never be free." "Not really." Clara turned to him, her gaze steady and full of love. "Then we'll end it," she said. "Not you, not me, us, her." Voice carried the same unwavering strength that had first given him hope. And in that moment Colton knew he could no longer run from the final chapter of his story. The next morning, he saddled his horse, but this time Clara saddled hers too. He tried to protest, but she silenced him with a firm hand on his arm. "I told you, Colton Hayes, I didn't marry half a man, and I won't let you fight half a battle." Together, they rode out of Red Creek, the town fading behind them as the wide-open plains stretched ahead. They rode for days, following whispers and trails, until they reached the desolate canyons where the remnants of Colton's tormentors had taken refuge. The land itself seemed scarred, dry and unforgiving, much like the memories Colton carried when they arrived. A small campfire burned in the canyon hollow. Around it sat the last of the men who had once branded him, their faces older but no less cruel. Their leader rose slowly, a twisted smile on his lips. "Well, well," he drawled. "The runaway dog comes home. Thought you'd hide forever under a woman's skirts, did you? But here you are bringing her along to watch you beg." Colton dismounted, his voice steady though his fists trembled. "I didn't come to beg. I came to end this." Clara stood tall beside him, her presence a beacon of courage, her eyes fixed on the men who had once broken her husband. The leader spat on the ground, fury twisting his face. "Then prove it," he snarled, drawing his gun. The canyon exploded in chaos. Shots echoed off the rock walls, dust rising with each step. Clara fired beside Colton, her aim unshaken, her voice steady as she called his name whenever fear threatened to drag him down. One by one, the men fell or fled, until only the leader remained, his gun smoking, his eyes blazing with hate. Colton faced him, revolver in hand. The final battle etched into the silence between them. For a moment, time seemed to pause. The boy he once was facing the monster who had defined his pain. Then Colton fired. The shot rang out, echoing through the canyon like thunder. The leader staggered, fell, and the dust swallowed him whole. Silence followed, broken only by the crackle of the dying campfire. Clara stepped to his side, her hand finding his. "It's over," she whispered. He turned to her, his eyes wet with tears he had held back for years. "It's over," he repeated, his voice breaking. The chains were gone. The past could no longer claim him. They rode back to Red Creek as the dawn painted the sky in shades of hope. The town welcomed them not just as survivors, but as victors. Colton no longer walked with the shadow of shame, but with the strength of a man who had faced his demons and emerged free. Clara's hand never left his, their bond stronger than any fear, any scar, any enemy. That night, as they sat once more on their porch, the stars burning bright above, Colton finally unbuttoned his shirt without hesitation, letting the cool night air touch his scars. He turned to Clara, his voice quiet but filled with peace. "These marks, I used to think they were the story of my chains, but now I know they're the story of my freedom, because every scar led me to you." Clara leaned against him, her heart full, her voice soft. "And I'd marry you 1,000 times over, scars and all." And so, dear listener, the cowboy nobody dared to touch found not just love, but redemption. His scars no longer defined his pain, they defined his strength, his survival, and the love that healed him. If this story has touched your heart, if it's reminded you that no past is too heavy to overcome, then make sure to subscribe to this channel. Survival and love that endures against all odds. So don't just listen, become part of this journey. Hit that subscribe button, share this story, and let's keep riding together into the next tale.